All right, let's get right into it. What we're going to do here is unpack a 40-year story that honestly explains just about everything you see in American politics today. It's the wild story of how the entire electorate did a complete 180, basically swapping parties and changing the fabric of the country.
And wow, this slide just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got Ronald Reagan's 1984 landslide. It's a sea of red, 49 out of 50 states. I mean, that's a national consensus. And on the right, well, that's America today. It's a deeply fractured map. It almost looks like two different countries living side by side. The visual shock here is really just the beginning of the story. Now this chart is the engine behind that change. Just look at these two lines. Back in 1980, the white working class, that's the red line, they were the absolute bedrock of the Democratic Party. And white college grads, in blue, they leaned Republican. Well, over the next 40 years, they completely trade places. It's what's known as the Great Inversion, and it is stunning.
So yeah, that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How did the party of the country club become the party of the multi-ethnic working class? And how did the party of the factory worker become the party of the urban elite? To get it, we've got to rewind the clock.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We're going back to the 1980s, when the old political world was still, basically intact.
The Reagan coalition, it was a thing of beauty. It wasn't just the wealthy folks. I mean, check out this data from '84. Reagan won a majority of union households, a majority of blue-collar voters. These were groups that for generations were the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. So what was the secret sauce? Well, it was economic optimism. People felt like their wallets were getting fatter, and that was enough to bridge all the other gaps.
But then we move into the 90s, and you start to see the first cracks appear in that foundation. This is really when the consensus starts to fracture, and the seeds of today's deep divides were planted.
This quote from our source material, man, it just nails what happened next. You had these bipartisan policies, especially on trade, that were celebrated in Washington as, these great engines of growth. But for millions of factory workers, they felt like something else entirely, a slow-acting poison. And here's the crucial part. Trade deals like NAFTA and opening up trade with China, well, they started this process of what you could call industrial severance. They slowly but surely cut the economic cord that tied the Democratic Party to its working class base. Ross Perot's shocking 19% populist vote back in '92, that was a massive warning sign, a canary in the coal mine, that a huge chunk of America felt totally abandoned by both parties.
And that brings us to what is, without a doubt, the single biggest factor in this entire 40-year story. It's not about your income anymore. It's about your education.
They call it the diploma divide, and it's pretty simple actually. Whether or not you have a college degree has become the most important political dividing line in America. It's even more important now than how much money you make. And this slide just visualizes the incredible scale of that divide. Back in 1980, you can see the non-college electorate was massive, and it was pretty reliably Democratic. Now, fast forward to 2020, that same group hasn't just shrunk, it's swung decisively over to the GOP. And at the exact same time, college graduates did a perfect mirror image flip. Why? Well, think about it. A college degree used to be a good proxy for being wealthy and Republican. Today, it's a much stronger proxy for holding socially liberal values, which, you guessed it, aligns with the modern Democratic Party. So what was the economic force behind all this? A ton of research points to something called the China shock, this massive wave of import competition. This map shows the counties that were hit the hardest, and the data is crystal clear. The more a community's manufacturing base got hollowed out, the more it swung Republican. It was like a slow-motion economic storm that just built up resentment for decades. And as the parties started sorting by education, they also started sorting by where they live. I mean, it makes sense, right? Those credentialed, college-level jobs are concentrated in cities. This created what's called the density gradient. So now politics isn't a gentle slope from the city to the country, it's a sheer cliff. You've got these overwhelmingly blue urban centers, suburbs that are trending blue, and then these monolithically red exurbs and rural areas.
Okay, so let's look at the consequences of all these massive changes. The political map of 2024 is, well, it's almost unrecognizable from that 1984 map we started with. Okay, get ready for a truly mind-blowing number. In 2024, Donald Trump lost the Hispanic vote by just 3 points. 3! For decades, the conventional wisdom was that a growing Hispanic population would create this permanent Democratic majority.
Well, that idea has been completely shattered. And you can see where this is happening on the ground. Take a look at this map of the Rio Grande Valley in Texas. Maverick County, which is 95% Hispanic, swung 14 points toward Trump. What this tells us is that for a growing number of working-class minority voters, things like economic concerns and cultural conservatism are becoming way more important than their traditional party loyalty. Class is starting to trump ethnicity. And it's not just Hispanic voters either. Support for Trump among black voters, driven mostly by black men, nearly doubled from 2020 to 2024. And at the same time, this massive gender gap is opening up among the youngest voters, Gen Z. Young women are trending sharply Democratic, while a lot of young men, maybe feeling culturally displaced, are moving toward the Republican Party.
So what does this all mean for the future? Well, as we're about to see, these brand new coalitions that have formed are, anything but stable.
This table here just perfectly sums up the entire transformation. Just look at the two columns, side by side. In every single category, class, education, geography, what motivates voters, the minority vote, the parties of 1984 and 2024 are polar opposites. It is a total, complete inversion of the American political order.
But here's the catch. These new coalitions are fragile. The modern GOP, for example, is a really tense alliance. On one hand, you have the core Republicans, your traditional fiscal conservatives who want to shrink government spending. But then you have the new entrants, the folks brought in by Trump. They're younger, more diverse and populist, and they are way more anti-austerity. They want to protect things like Social Security. These two groups have fundamentally different ideas about the economy.
So looking forward, both parties are facing some huge risks. That old Democratic idea of a new American majority powered by demographics, that's looking more and more like a mirage as minority voters shift. But the GOP has its own problem. Their new voters are less loyal and less likely to show up without a big, powerful populist figurehead on the ticket. The future, for everyone, looks pretty unstable.
So, at the end of the day, here's the big takeaway. We now live in a country that's defined by two competing economies, and each one is represented by a different party. You've got the knowledge economy of credentialed professionals, and you have the industrial and rural economy of those who feel left behind. This isn't some temporary blip. The diploma divide is the central conflict of our time, and the most important thing to understand from all of this is the new normal.